Jaxon Wiggins was optioned to minor league camp, but what does that mean? I still think that the Cubs' top pitching prospect is right on target to contribute soon, early in the season, to the big league roster. Cubs had their first round of cuts. Who else was part of that? And in the bullpen, the young players, who are some of the Cubs minor leaguers that could contribute to the bullpen sooner than later? We're going to talk all that right here on the Cubs Baseball channel. Like, subscribe, thumbs up, hit the bell. Be part of what we're doing. Don't forget about Beer Money with Jody Davis. Don't forget about Jesse Rogers. We got him coming up this week. All that right here on the Cubs Baseball channel. Let's get this show started. Great to see you guys today, too. Spring training underway, World Baseball Classic underway. We got stuff going, man. Let's go. What do you say, everybody? Mick Gillespie, Cubs Baseball channel. Let's talk a little bit of Cubs baseball. All right, Cubs made cuts, and one of those guys that was cut was pitching prospect Jaxon Wiggins, and that does not surprise me at all. I mean, maybe that he got cut now, but he is most likely going to be on the Iowa Cubs roster to start the season. And you hear from baseball experts like Bruce Levine saying, hey, like, he could be the first guy that really steps up out of the organization to pitch. And I don't think that's that hard to say, because there really isn't that many guys that you look at the minor league system that the Cubs have that are even close to contending to be someone to keep an eye on. Although I'm going to talk about some of those guys right now, but this isn't a farm system that is stacked with arms, and this guy is really talented. I mean, when you talk about, again, the 58th overall prospect, 6'6" right-hander Jaxon Wiggins, you're talking about, first off, a really good fastball. Four-seamers, like 96, 98, can get it up over 100 miles an hour. Scouts graded out at a 70 on that 80 grade scouting scale. And, you know, he's just one of those guys when you talk about arm side run and the elite extension that he has when you talk about his size and then the extension on the reach. He's a really, really tough pitcher to hit. Sliders, pretty solid. They grade that out as an 80. One of those bullet sliders, you get that, man. You know, he throws it with that spiked grip, gets a bunch of swings and misses. Like, the whiff rate on that thing's like 45%. And then his changeup's developing, you know, not quite as good as the slider. Curveball is a little bit less than that. And then the thing that kills him, and he's been constantly working on, is control and command. And that's why you go back to the minor leagues. And I think part of it is also that the Cubs really don't have a spot for him today. But if Jed Hoyer's right, and the Cubs should be worried about depth, right, in the system, pitching depth with the big league club, then Jaxon Wiggins is in a great spot, right? I mean, he's in perfect position to be an asset on this team. And he was, invited to spring training as a non-roster invitee, first time around, and we kind of knew that the 24-year-old was going to end right back in Iowa, and that's where he's going to start. Last season, 3-4, 2.19 ERA, 97 strikeouts, and 78 innings. Didn't pitch enough for me. I felt like the guy's got to give you more innings. I think that's what the next big thing for him is going to be, is just finding those innings, right? Finding those pitches. And I think that the Cubs were dealing with a guy in Wiggins who's dealt with a ton of injuries, and you just want to make sure that he's healthy. And I think we're there. And now it's, okay, how can we get the most out of what he brings to the table? Beer Money, Jody Davis, every Sunday. You guys better check it out. Look, this is a different type of show than the stuff that we do on here, but it is really fantastic to sit there and hear from a Cubs Hall of Famer on a weekly basis. We talked about Rick Sutcliffe. We all love Sut. He's awesome. Cy Young Award winner. Jody was his catcher. He said he didn't hear from Sut when he won the Cy Young. He said that on game days, they were like brothers all week, but on game days, all bets off. Great conversation with Jody Davis, and you guys check it out as well. He's not a super fan of analytics either. I think he respects them, but appreciates that you got to go out there and play the game like a dog. But you guys tell me, check out the show. And again, appreciate Jody. I love him for being part of this, and I can't wait for him to get into the Cubs Hall of Fame. All right, second conversation. Cubs made their cuts. First round of cuts. And spring training is all about the cuts. And so you make these cuts, and it's like, okay, when they do, who's going where, and what does that look like? And so, when a team makes cuts in spring training, a lot of times this early, there's no surprises. So as a guy who is versed in the Cubs system, I'm going to run through the cuts with you and talk about some of the players that I know. All right. Minor league camp. Grant Kipp, right-handed pitcher, sent to minor league camp. This is an interesting guy. He's a really smart player, pitched in an Ivy League school. I've seen flashes of a guy that could be a Kyle Hendricks type of dude. A different style, but really smart pitcher, does things the right way, can get outs, and someone that I think that the Cubs would definitely like to have pushing for a spot in the big leagues. Connor Nolan, you're talking about a bulldog type of guy. He got, cut as well, another right-handed pitcher, someone that I think he gives the Cubs some depth as far as pitching goes, pitches like a football player because he's a two-sport athlete. Connor Schultz, and then JAXON Wiggins sent down. We talked about JAXON Wiggins, right? So now the Cubs roster has 28 pitchers. 6 of those are non-roster invitees. They got 6 catchers, 3 non-roster guys, 10 outfielders, 4 non-roster guys, 10 infielders, 4 non-roster guys, 9 outfielders, 4 non-roster players as well, right? So you're talking about taking the roster from 62 to 53, and they're going to just continue to kind of whittle that roster down. The position players that were part of this cut are infielder Pedro Ramirez, who is assigned to Double-A. I'm guessing that he's going to be in Triple-A this year. Really good switch hitter, guy that gives you a great at bat, excellent defensively, won a minor league Gold Glove. I think scouts look at him and they're like, man, this guy, he doesn't really have anything that he does exceptionally well, but he does a lot of things well. And I think he's a really smart baseball player. Riley Martin and Jack Neely, 2 relievers, got sent down. Riley Martin, to me, is a really interesting pitcher, throws a lot of strikes. Jack Neely's the guy that the Cubs got in a deadline trade from the Yankees. And, and a guy that you're looking at and you're like, okay, James Triantos was sent down. Triantos is someone that the Cubs, prospect list had as one of the top guys, and trying to get back to that same spot again, right? Still trying to climb that ladder. And so, but that part of all that roster movement. So we'll keep an eye on that. No surprises here. I mean, and I don't know that there's going to be any big surprises until you get towards the end of spring training, because then you got to figure out with guys that expect to be on the roster, hope to get there. These are all young players for the most part. Now, I did want to bring this up, right? Of the Cubs relief minor leaguers, who are some of the guys that I feel like could impact the big league roster, and how important are those guys? And when you start thinking about what a minor league pitching staff could help a big league pitching staff do, you start thinking about okay, who are the options that you have in your system of guys that could potentially climb the ladder and get there and help you out. And then that kind of leads to some injuries. But first off, it starts with left-handed reliever Luke Little. Big Little, of the little brothers that pitch, is a big left-hander who, if he can throw strikes, if he figures out the control part of the game, is going to be a really, really big asset for the Cubs. And I think everybody sees this with him, but it's just the consistency of being able to go out there and pitch at the major league level with command and control, because that's the thing that's always held him back from the beginning. But a really nice piece for the Cubs. He's not going to, I think he's got a chance to break camp with the Cubs, but he's going to have to be really accurate. Right-handed pitcher Porter Hodge dealing with some injuries. We'll talk about that next segment. Ethan Roberts and Jack Neely. We talked about Neely a second ago. Roberts has been on the, back and forth, the shuttle squad for the Cubs. He's a guy I like a lot, man. A former college closer, really tough guy. He's what makes baseball great, even though he's not a big, tall dude. He goes out there and pitches big, and I love that about him, for Roberts, he worked this offseason to increase his velocity, and it's up a little bit, so we'll see if that continues. And he's a guy that you can keep an eye on, pitching for the Italian team in the World Baseball Classic. But all these guys, they get to work with the Cubs in their pitch lab, right? So you talk about Roberts, 93, 94, 95, they've seen a tick up in velocity, and that's what he's been working on this offseason. And hopefully that helps out. I feel like with Luke Little, it's all about command, and velocity may take a little bit of a backseat to get the command. But when you're a left-hander and you're as big as him, get the command down, and then, and maybe add the velocity, right? And so, that's another guy. But the Cubs need some of these dudes to step up. And the crazy, sad part about it is Porter Hodge coming into this season, I'm looking at it and I'm like, man, 2024, he had that great success. He had a 188 ERA, 9 saves, 39 appearances for the Cubs, right? And then he's just been dealing with injuries. And, what was it? A 627 last year in 36 games and 2 injuries. And then immediately you're talking about him being injured, right? Flexor strain. Don't expect him back until April. Craig Counsell basically said on the 8th that Hodge would be shut down from throwing for a couple weeks and then reevaluated. So he's going to be out of action. Another guy to keep an eye on, I didn't put him in this list, but is Jordan Wicks. He's dealing with the left forearm. They're saying he's going to come back in April. Wicks, we saw like some great stuff with Wicks. I remember doing the show when he got into the big leagues, and I'm like, man, his changeup's going to work here. And it did. But, it's just been staying healthy. Resumed playing catch on March 3rd after pausing. And then, they're shutting him down, taking their time. And I guess they're saying that he could start the season on the IL, and then, a couple other guys, when you talk about pitchers, Shelby Miller, they signed him on the IL. Just expect him next year. And then Justin Steele, with the elbow that he had, the left elbow, climbing the ladder, but he's not going to be back until, I don't know, I'd say May. I mean, I don't think that you push him, right, to try to get him back. So, if the Cubs are thinking that he's going to help them, I'm guessing probably sometime in June, maybe, where you get him back and he's an asset. So anyway, there's some guys. Riley Martin's another guy. I really like Riley Martin. Like, he's not the first Riley Martin that I've ever come across. There was a guy that used to, there's a guy that used to be on the Howard Stern show that talked about aliens all the time. So every time I hear Riley Martin, I'm like, hey, he's got the same name as the guy, the alien guy. But, and maybe it's Riley Martin's ability to go out there and pitch that's going to get this Riley Martin to the major leagues. He's a 27-year-old left-hander. And they had him down as a right-hander. No, he's a lefty. Last year was 6-2 with a 269 ERA in Iowa. I think he can be super effective. And being left-handed, you know that there's always going to be a spot to try to get another lefty out there to get things done. He's certainly that guy, and someone to watch. And for the Cubs, hope that he's able to contribute, you know, and they're going to have one or two of these minor leaguers break through. They do every year. And so we'll find out. But anyway, look, thank you guys for being here. Hopefully we'll have Jesse Rogers on with us tomorrow or the next day. But I always love to hear what he has to say. We'll, you know, keep on grinding here on the channel. Make sure that you like and subscribe, be a part of it. And with March Madness coming, don't forget about Avenue D. Yeah, there it is right there. That's our QR code for Avenue D. Mick Nation, be a part of that. We're going to follow the NCAA tournament. St. Patrick's Day is coming up next week. I'm going to be in Chicago for that. You going? Who's in for some green beer? Anybody like green beer? All right, like, subscribe, thumbs up, hit the bell, and I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Oh, one last thing. Cannot leave without this Rat Pack cards. It's where you go on the Whatnot app and you get an opportunity to bid on some spectacular cards. And sometimes you put in 60 and your card's worth $2,000. It happens. You know, you get that Paul Skeens autograph rookie card. They were doing those on there the other day. So anyway, if you're a collector, make sure that you check out the Rat Pack and tell me what you think on Whatnot. All right. Thank you guys. Talk to you tomorrow. Go Cubs.